Hello, everyone. Welcome to QuickStreams. We are here with Ben Holmes. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing pretty all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm coming at you all from Remix Comp, so forgive the hotel room and the lighting and whatnot, and hopefully we won't get any sound interruptions or anything like that. But I think we should be all good for the most part. So really happy to have Ben here from the Astro team. Why don't you tell our viewers just a little bit about yourself and about Astro?
Yeah, so I am Ben Holmes. Sorry, messing with some audio here. I am a web developer that started doing a lot of front end work, then learned a little bit of full stack. Now I don't know where I totally am because I work in the library space a lot. But I've been in open source for a bit, first in the 11 community working on something called Slinkity, and now joining the Astro team full time to work as both a developer and someone who's kind of spreading the word through streams, tweets, etc. So it's been a wild ride. It feels like I've been in the open source space for years, but I just published to NPM for the first time in August, I think, of last year. So it's
Yeah,
just wild.
I remember I was there. This is the
You
reason why
forced
you
me
and
to
I
do it. You
kind of got
forced
to
my
know each
hand.
other. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was very interested in Slinkity, and I kept telling you needed to ship something. So you eventually shipped it, and then I QA'd it and found some things,
Yep.
and it was great. And I've really enjoyed getting to work with you on that, and I felt fairly confident that I could call in a favor, and you would not be able to say no. So this
Mm,
is that favor. So you no longer owe me. No, that's not true. You still owe me. No, that's not
nice.
true.
Ooh, yeah, you're running out of favors.
Uh,
This might be the last live stream we do together. I hate to say it.
Oh
No,
no.
always
Nah,
been.
it's all good, man. I really like appreciate your presence in the community. I really appreciate the fact that you're streaming now. Like you do your own solo streams. You want to drop that link or what? I'll drop the link in the chat for you. It's gonna be Holmes Dev, right?
Yeah, right on the whiteboard behind me because I usually don't erase things because I like to reuse for promo and filming and such. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I stream over on Twitch, 2 p.m. Eastern every Thursday. Just kind of working on Astro right now, planning to build a sort of dashboard e-commerce experience with Astro to feel out some of the new patterns that we have in the framework. So if that interests you at all, working with server-side rendering and such, definitely stop by. Should be a lot of fun.
Very cool. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to build out a little Astro project and connect it to a smart contract. So I don't know what you know about Web3 or blockchains or smart contracts or any of that. And I'm assuming you aren't totally against it because you're on this stream. So I'd be curious, what are your thoughts about this whole space and what you know about it?
Yeah, I'll put it as I'm not against learning. I've
I
seen
like
both
that
sides of the
attitude.
coin and opinions that people have, at least on like the blockchain and NFT space. I am an extreme skeptic on those sorts of areas, especially the monetization angle and what I've sort of seen going on with artists and such. We're not going to get into philosophy here. But on the Web3 side, it is kind of interesting to see like how you could form a business if that is your intention. So I guess I'm interested to know, like, first off, how you can connect it. It sounds like you prepared a full project end to end, so I don't have
Yeah.
to learn up and explain this myself. So that's great.
Yeah, I'll be
Mostly just
explaining
here to
the
like, yeah,
Yeah, I'll be explaining the blockchain stuff, and you'll be explaining the Astro stuff, and we'll just kind of walk through the project and kind of explain it to the listeners as we go. But yeah, like what we're doing today, it's not gonna involve any tokens, it's not gonna involve any money, it's not gonna involve any of that. We're just going to deploy a smart contract and then connect it to an Astro project. And so all a smart contract is a program that's on the blockchain. So for me, if I were to try and like make this pitch to people, and I've been like trying to hone this exactly, especially talking to people who are traditional web developers and maybe skeptical of Web3, is that it's a program that you can embed that no one can take down and no one can stop you from deploying, and that you have control over because it is all cryptographically connected from the ground up. So I think that the problem with the web that we kind of, hey Brandon, thanks so much for popping in. I think the problem with the web, the way it is currently created, is that it's not optimized for users. It's more optimized for platforms and the people who are creating things like Facebook and Google. And when you are using those services, you can't see what they're doing. That's the other thing. Transparency is the other part. So transparency and access and control and ownership. Like those are all of the things that to me are the value props here, because when you're using something like Facebook or Twitter, as much as I love Twitter, you can't really know how that program works, and you can't really control all of your data. Like we've gotten better about that with certain laws that are forcing these companies' hands. But with something like the blockchain, you are in control of your own program, you're in control of your own data, and you're in control of what happens with all of that from the ground up. And the reason why is because it's all cryptographically verified, and you have what's called like a wallet. And so do you know what like PGP is? Pretty good privacy.
Sounds pretty good. I don't know about that protocol. If you want to explain it.
PGP is probably one of the more well-known cryptographic message protocols, which is, if you've ever seen someone, they may have like a PGP key on like their Twitter. It's not as common these days, but it would be like just this like long string of text, and it would allow someone to send a message to that person, and then that person can make sure that they get that message, and no one can sniff that message on the way there. No one can read it. So you can communicate with someone and be confident that no one is eavesdropping on actions be secured, and you can have programs be secured, and you can have all the things you're doing to interact with the programs be secured as well. So it's a very high level philosophical pitch, but I think that that spin out from it are actually quite interesting, because, you know, people complain constantly about Silicon Valley companies and all the things they do and how evil they are and all this stuff. And it's like, you can complain as much as you want forever, but this is actually stuff that we're building to try and mitigate those externalities and give control back to the users. So does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yes, I think so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, definitely like to see it in action.
Yeah, no, totally. And you will see it all in action. So yeah, I think we can probably get going here. Is there anything else you want to say about Astro before we get going? I don't think you like explain like the Astro 101 to people yet.
We can. I mean, I can. I mean,
yeah,
Astro.
So just give like the high level pitch, like islands architecture, stuff like that.
Easy. Yeah, I've been saying it my whole life, feels like. But yeah, Astro is used to just be a static site generator. Now it's both just a website builder, is just a generic term I'd use. Lets you either render to the server, to the edge, or to static assets. And it lets you bring any components that you want to the table. So you start by writing some plain HTML and some server requests at the top of all the routes on your site. And then you can hydrate individual components on the page, sort of piecemeal, depending on what you need. Where, for example, you could write a heading with React, for example. So you slap a React component on there for your page like hero or something like that. And if you don't want to ship JavaScript with that hero, you can opt out of it and say, I don't need JavaScript for this heading. It's just plain text. And then you can insert another React component that's an image carousel and say, all right, I want to load JavaScript for this one, just not the hero banner. So then we sort of give you these helpers called client directives to choose whether to ship JavaScript with the HTML that you're showing to your users. So it's a major philosophy called islands architecture that makes that possible. I'm sure we'll demo a little bit of that today.
Yeah, and we'll have some of those client directives as well. So all that stuff that Ben just said, you'll get to see in the actual project. All right, cool. Great. Let's get going then. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Bam, bam, bam. All right, good deal. So I really like just kind of starting projects totally from the ground up, because I think that's usually the best way for people to learn how this works. So you guys have a ton of awesome starters, and I'm not going to use any of those, but if you want to talk about like what are some of the starters people could use if they want to generate a project, not like by just like creating an empty directory, like what are some like frameworks that people tend to use with Astro?
Oh yeah. I guess kind of different questions. The first suggestion I have is like try using astro.new. It's a website you can go to and get just a online editor with Gitpod, StackBlitz, and anything else you want in order to try out Astro on your own. And we have a bunch of templates to get started there. And if you want to build locally, the create Astro command is also a really great one. It's on our getting started docs if you want to go Google for that and go find it. And generally, oh, yes. I think it'll explain it right there. the online editors and manual installation. But yeah, the frameworks people use, usually, we actually have some analytics now. A lot of people love using our Tailwind integration to just type Astro add Tailwind in their
people
terminal.
like Tailwind?
Suddenly you have it. I know. It's like the #1 integration right now, kind of. We're still getting the numbers, but I'd kind of call out, like, we have a really easy way to just type one CLI command and configure Tailwind automatically with a config file and everything. Otherwise, people are bringing in React, bringing in stuff in Vue. Yeah, we don't link it there, but on astro.new, the website, we do link it. So, if you're that kind of person that likes spinning up just the full online editor, I know this is great for people who use like Chromebooks. We actually have some people in our maintainer squad that do that. So that's a really great editing.
This is fantastic. I've never seen this before, actually.
Yeah, there's so much here. There's so much. Yeah, the big ones are at the top. I would say like documentation, blogs, and portfolios are like great getting started guides. But going further with server-side rendering and e-commerce experiences as the next frontier, that's where I'm going to see some of this stuff going. But right now, marketing and content creation are perfect for Astro.
Cool. I need to let someone know they need to buy QuickNode.new stat.
Yeah. .new's always
okay,
nice.
So I am going to just get us a little project set up here, and we're going to install a couple dependencies. This is one of the things I like about doing this from scratch, that you can see that these are the Web3 kind of things. You got Hardhat, which is our kind of deployment environment and development environment. We have Ethers, which is a JavaScript library that gives you some nice conventions for connecting to the blockchain. And then this Hardhat Ethers, which integrates the two together. But then all we have is a single development dependency, which is just Astro. And like that is all of Astro, right?
Yeah. And I will say we have some like environment variable stuff built in. I don't know what you're using .m for, but just minor call out.
That is for the Hardhat stuff.
Yeah, I had a feeling it's for the this is like a full stack setup, right?
You could, yes, so you could call that. This is an interesting point, which is that I kind of say that Web3 is like Jamstack by default, like full stack Jamstack by default, because you're always going to have a decoupled front end and back end, the back end being the blockchain, and then the front end being your client application, which is what we're building out here.
Got it. Yeah.
And then
if
we're going to have
decoupling's in there, it's Jamstack. That's been my moniker.
So we have a couple of things we're going to create here. So the one of the things that I like about Hardhat is that you just need 3 files to get going. We're going to have a hello world.sol, which is our Solidity file. Do you know what Solidity is?
Yeah. I remember like looking through code samples it's been around for years, I think. I don't know if it's like the standard, but it is
So Solidity is the language.
It is a programming language. Yeah.
It was a programming language that was invented for Ethereum specifically. Now, we're not actually going to be using Ethereum. We're going to be using Avalanche for this demo, but Avalanche is compatible with the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine. So it's a programming language that is specifically designed for smart contracts. And so we'll get into that once we get there. And then we have another file, which is our deployment script in Hardhat, and then our Hardhat config, which is how we're actually going to configure our QuickNode endpoint and all of that. And then we're going to do one of these now. Yeah, we'll get to that later. And then here are our scripts. So this will be, we've got Astro Dev, Astro Build, and Astro Preview. We're only going to really be using Astro Dev and Astro Build, but you want to talk a little bit about what is Astro Preview? Because I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's just a way to preview your production build after you run Astro Build. It's not super complex, but it's nice to have that built in for sure.
So you build your site and then you can run it, how is that different from Astro Dev?
I mean, in Dev, it's going to be using Vite in development mode. That's like the big one. So all your dependencies are unbundled, and when you're changing files, you'll live see those changes in the dev server. But if you run build and preview, build is going to bundle everything into an optimized production build, minify stuff, collapse files, and then preview is just spinning up that production build. It's not going to reboot whenever you save file changes. It's just a way to make sure your production build reflects everything that you were trying to work on.
Cool. Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay, I will walk through exactly what is going on here. So this is our Solidity Solidity contract, and so what we got here is we're first going to say the version of Solidity, because you always want to explicitly declare your version to make sure you don't have any weirdness going on with that. We're using Hardhat just to do some kind of console log stuff for us for development, and then we're defining a contract. So if we just comment all that out, we have a contract, and then we give that contract a name. That contract is going to be Hello World. Nice and simple. Now, this contract is going to have a variable, which is going to contain a string called hello message. And this is, object-oriented kind of stuff. We also have a constructor, which is going to allow us to pass in a string that will set the hello message to whatever we pass in. And so that's what's happening here. And so as you can tell, this is like a little bit JavaScript like, not exactly, because it's got types. So it's it's a C-like, JavaScript-like kind of language with types on it. So if you do know JavaScript, you can probably pick up Solidity pretty fast. There's just like a couple things you got to kind of learn about it, but we're going to define functions just like we would in JavaScript. And this is going to be a hello function. And then you have private and public, which is kind of deeper level stuff that we don't really need to get in too much. This is about how you manage who can access what. And this is the type of stuff that there's going to be like many, many levels to like auditing these contracts to make sure they actually work. Now, since we're just doing it like an end-to-end example here so people can see what it's like to deploy a very basic contract, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into actually making sure these contracts are like good to go, because if you think about it, these are eventually going to be connected to funds and money, and a bug in a smart contract will directly impact funds usually. So there's a very famous hack that happened to Ethereum. It was the DAO hack, and it basically allowed someone to siphon off like millions of dollars. And so they actually had to like fork the entire chain and create a new one to say like, hey, we're going to rewrite this and take that bug out, and now this is the new state. So that's a whole kind of specialty onto itself that we're not going to get into very much. And then the final function we have is actually to write to the smart contract. So the hello function will read, and then the set hello will write. So we're just going to do some kind of basic CRUD functionality here. And oh, my AC just went on. Hold on a second. Okay. So this is our whole contract here. We got a getter and a setter is like a good way to think about it. So do you have any questions about what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, other than the type definitions looking a little wacky, like public view returns string memory, like in TypeScript, I would have just said string, but cool. Otherwise, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you even got console.log, fairly familiar. It takes me back to some Java that I used to write. Don't
talk to me about Java.
Well, when you say getters and setters, I'm like, oh, I know the mindset. I know where we are. But with contracts, that kind of makes sense. That's the object. It's how you protect things. You can make things private and public. I'm sure that matters a lot more in Solidity than other languages.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So that is our smart contract. And then this is going to be our deployment script. And what this is going to do is we're going to get the contract, and then we're going to do create a factory. So a factory, this is another like kind of object oriented. If you know Java, you probably know what that is. It's you have you're like going to create specific kind of like objects based on this like object definition. And so we feed it the contract we want, and then we run this .deploy command on it. Let's say hello from Astro here. And then what this will do is this message is going to be set to the hello message. So we're going to pass in a string as we deploy it, and then we'll await it and then do the .deployed. And then here we have our console logs to actually console log our address and then our signer. So this is the more of the kind of, Web3 isms here, because we're going to have a wallet that we're going to use when we deploy this. So we're going to have a sign, which is more of like the cryptography kind of stuff. And that's what verifies, who specifically deployed this contract, because by giving my wallet address, I can kind of stamp myself onto it and like own it. So then when I want to go and then change it and do the setter, then no one else can do that. Only I can do that. So that's what I mean about the ownership factor, and the fact that like this contract will be out in the world that people can interact with, but I still have control over it because I'm the one who signed this contract.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the final piece is our Hardhat.config. And what's happening here is we're going to have our Solidity version, which is going to match up with this right here. And then we're going to set the path for our artifacts. And what this is going to do is this is going to generate a bunch of JSON that Astro is then going to interact with. And we can look at that a little more once we get into that. And then we're going to set the network. So this is where we would define whether we want to deploy this to Ethereum or to a different network. And the reason why it says Fuji is because we're going to be using the Avalanche test network. So for each blockchain, there will be mainnet and then testnet. There can be one testnet, there can be multiple testnets. And so Fuji is the Avalanche testnet, and it allows us to do this whole thing without real money. So we're going to have a wallet that's going to have AVAX tokens in it, but they're not real. And you can just go to the Fuji faucet. And so the Fuji faucet will allow you to just plug in your wallet and take some funds. So for here, if we check this out, then we have the Fuji C chain, and you'll add in your address and then just request some AVAX. I've already got some in my wallet, and so I don't need to do that because we can just see I've already got some AVAX in my wallet here. And so this is our MetaMask wallet. We're actually going to be switching to using the Coinbase wallet more than MetaMask, but this will probably be the last demo I'll do just with MetaMask. And we have different chains we can connect to. So I've got Ethereum, and I've got the Avalanche mainnet, and then the Avalanche Fuji testnet. And so interacting with your wallet is like a very big part of Web3. And this is where people can get tripped up, because this is where if you click a link and then you click like a link that you shouldn't click, and then you connect your wallet to it, people can take things from your wallet. So this is like a very, very important thing that don't ever click links you shouldn't click, and don't ever click links random people send you, because you will get owned.
Yeah, I know.
And then here we got our QuickNode URL and then our private key. Now, this is where we get into the QuickNode stuff, which is my company and where I work. So QuickNode is for deploying APIs. So we're not a node provider. This is an important kind of thing, is that there's some places that will give you a node, whereas we are giving you like a global API that just has an endpoint to it. So you're not like we're not spinning up a server for you. We're giving you an endpoint that connects to like the sum total of QuickNode. And when you sign in, you will see that I've got these endpoints here. So this is one that I've already created, and you have an HTTP provider. And I'm not going to show this whole thing because at the end of your endpoint is like a private key. So this endpoint itself is something that should be private, is something that you should not ever hard code into your project. It's very important that you put this in an environment variable, which is why I created this .env over here. And we're going to set our QuickNode URL, and then we're going to set the private key for our wallet, which you can get from here by exporting your private key, which of course I will not do. But to get that all set up, I'm going to hop off of screen sharing for a second. So any questions so far about all that I just did?
Not yet. I respect how rehearsed and well executed all these environment variables are. I've already been struggling with that on stream. I had to take down a couple VODs just from trying to hide it. It's tough.
This is something I had to do with StepZen as well, because with steps, and this is the previous company I worked at, and which you also did a stream with me for. We had like your steps and endpoint, and then to access it, you need an API key because it would be secured by default. And with QuickNode, you can also set JWTs. You can lock it down in even more ways beyond just like hiding the URL itself. But for now, we're not going to do any of that. But you're correct that there's a lot that goes into doing a stream like this and not having to blow away your keys and your endpoints every single time.
Oh my God. It's because even if you're off for one frame, it's like, well, you can pause on that one frame pretty easy. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Good. That's good. Okay. And then back to sharing. Okay, so I set the environment variables for this URL and then for this private key. And then one thing, just for viewers' sake, if you're trying to follow along at home with this, once you get your QuickNode URL, you need to append this thing right here, /ext, /bc, /C, /RPC. So what the heck is that? This is because Avalanche has what are called subnets, which basically means that we have a couple different interacting microservices is a way to think of it. They don't use the term microservices, but I think it's a pretty good way to think about it. There's going to be like the Avalanche chain itself, and then there's going to be like the Avalanche smart contract part, which is what we are interacting with here. So that's what the C is for. The C is for the C chain, specifically for contract. And so that's an important thing for people who are going to be following along with this. Make sure you do that. Now we're going to run Hardhat compile, and all of our Hardhat commands are appended, have yarn at the front. You could do this with npx also if you wanted to. And what that does is it takes our Solidity file and it compiles an ABI, an application binary interface. And then that is what we're going to actually deploy to the Fuji network here. So now we're running our deployment script, yarn hardhat run scripts /deploy.js. And then we're doing -- network to specify the Fuji network. And then now we have a contract address. And we can verify that this contract address actually exists on the blockchain by taking this address and plugging it into the Snowtrace testnet explorer. And this is something that, Ethereum will have and other chains as well. So here's our contract. It is 28 seconds old and it has no funds in it. And this is a good way to kind of see that this thing actually exists on the blockchain. So this is what I say when I talk about how there's transparency in the blockchain, because everything is on the blockchain can be seen. Now, if I wanted to do this kind of privately, I would want to make sure that people don't know like my wallet account, because then they can see that I'm the one who deployed this. So if you actually like want to put things on the blockchain and protect your own identity, there's a couple other levels to it. And some are optimized for that more than others, but you still like no one can take this contract address and mess with it, because when I deployed it, my private key was associated with it.
Gotcha.
Okay, let's get into the Astro stuff now. I'm sure that was all very riveting for you.
It's interesting. I mean, so with a contract up, is a contract a single transaction or a store for all transactions that you might want to submit?
That's a good question. So the contract will track the transactions. So deploying the contract,
just going to check, is it a ledger? Am I getting
exactly? Yeah. So this is a good way to describe what a blockchain is. It's a distributed ledger that is on everyone's computer who is running that blockchain. So you have transactions, and a transaction can be, I want to move funds from this account to this account, or I want to have a smart contract that when I give it $1, it feeds that out to these 5 addresses. So you can like embed logic to do transactions for you as well.
Right. So since this only has like a hello world in it, there's no way it could transfer funds, right?
Correct, because it is not, there's no logic in it to say, look into this person's wallet and
Right.
see their funds and do something with their funds. It's just a message that's associated with it. Now, usually, if this was on mainnet, there would be funds to like do the setter. So the setter itself is not free. And this is why we do this on testnet with fake AVAX tokens, because it costs AVAX
gas fees
to interact with it. And this is because this goes more into like how these things are set up to actually like compensate the people who run the network, because like this stuff ain't free. Like computers aren't free. Computing power is not free. You know, it's like this stuff doesn't just come out of thin air. So the network itself has incentive mechanisms built into it. So people who are interacting with it have to pay. And it's like, that's a thing that can trip people up with this Web3 stuff. And they're like, well, I don't like the fact that like you always have to pay. And it's like, well, like, I'm sorry, but like things cost money. Now, you can set up in a way where the person running it just eats those transactions, and you can set up so your users don't actually have to pay, but someone has to pay somewhere because computing power is not free.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So what's happening here? This is you.
All right. It's a page. It's got a title, and we're putting the title up in that front matter block. People don't know when you do the triple dashes on the top, you can write JavaScript, and it's server-side JavaScript. So the analogy I give is like, if you're coming from Next.js and you've used get server-side props or get static props, it's that, but less code. So all you have to do is triple dashes, write a bunch of server code, and all variables that you declare in that block are available in the markup that server is responding with. So here we've created a title variable. It's got a value. Then we're slapping it in our HTML document directly. And you can see here, we're writing the full HTML document. There's not a fancy like React helmet or an app.tsx or something you have to update. You just write HTML top to bottom and compose it with components, which I assume we'll at least try out a little bit.
Yeah, and I like that because then we can do something like this. If we want to include just a little style sheet, we can just put a link with a rel style sheet, and then we're going to point it to this water.css, which is just a nice little CSS preset that I really like. So it gives you a nice little look like so. Our website's going to look exactly
I've never
like
seen
this.
a CSS file on Product Hunt. That's fantastic.
Hey, number 3 project of the day. I mean, I really like
to
this.
Publish my CSS just for product of the day.
I am not a CSS expert. I have mad respect for people who are CSS experts, and that is not me. So I really like having something like this to make my website look a little less dumb.
Love it. We can't all be Steph Eccles.
It's true. No, we cannot. Very few of us can be. Oh, wait, hold on. One more time. Okay. Now, yarn dev, local host, 3000. There we are. Astro, taking it to the moon.
Wow. It's a page.
It's a page.
Oh, and it has a max width. Nice.
Yeah, totally. So let's get this over here. And let me pull this guy up. Pull that down. Okay. Now, this is fairly new. When I wrote my first Astro blog post, this did not exist. What is this?
No, it didn't. Yeah, this was added, I think, a month ago by a super amazing contributor and one of our core members, Nate. I think it was Juan who wrote this. Shout out to Juan if it was. But yeah, this updates your config programmatically. So it's just writing to the config file directly. And if you like what you see, you can hit yes.
Well, it creates the config file too, because I have no config file here. All right, or maybe I do. Oh.
Yeah. If you didn't have one, it would create one for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
But otherwise, it'll update it in place and not mess with what you have.
And then what it's going to do is it's going to let us know what framework we want to use. And so I'm specifying React here. And then it's going to not only create our config, but then also install our dependencies. Now, this is a really nice touch here because it used to be, and you do this with Slinkity too, you would have to actually install React kind of manually, whereas this is doing the whole end-to-end thing for you. And it's also installing this Astro.js/React. So what is this?
Yeah, that's a little container that's going to take React and React DOM. It's going to specify, here's how you render a React component on the client, and here's how you would server render that React component if you want to just server render it. and then it would pass that off to Astro to basically teach the framework. Here's what you do with JSX files. Then Astro can use that integration and say, all right, every time I see JSX and TSX, I'm going to use your client and server renderers. So we have those for like a lot of major frameworks now: Solid, Preact, Vue, Svelte, Lit Element if you're a web components person. They're all here, and you can write your own if you're into that.
Nice. Yeah, I still haven't tried Lit yet. I gotta give that a spin sometime.
Yeah, I am a fan of using Svelte and their custom elements compiler. So you can use Svelte to write web components. It's so clean. Lit Element it's just hard to learn for me. But if you're into classes, which you might be if you're a Solidity person, it's there. You can do it.
Very cool. Okay. Now, I'll be honest, before I did this, I was having trouble with the environment variables. So I think another time you and I are going to have to actually work out how to get this to work with Astro specifically, because there's some kind of weirdness happening, but we don't really have time to get into that right now. So that's a time for another stream. But what's going to happen here is going to be our whole kind of front-end React component that's going to interact with our smart contract. And so we took that contract address that is spit out for us, and then we import those artifacts that were created for us over here. And this is JSON stuff. And this is, if you look at, like, we have the methods and the variables and the constructor, and it's taking all of that and giving you like a kind of JSON representation of it. And then we're going to do a classic use state. Use state will give us a hello variable and then set hello value. And then we are going to check for the MetaMask provider right here. And then we're going to have this fetch hello function. There's a decent amount of stuff going on in this function. And like, I gotta give credit to Natter Dabbit, because I've just been like copy and pasting this kind of logic that came from his tutorial that I first read like 6 months ago, and it just like works, and you can just, you know, kind of change the variable names and get it going for you. So what's happening is we're going to set the provider using the ethers library, and then we're going to pass in our contract, our ABI, and then that provider we just specified. We're then going to do a try catch, which is going to run the hello function on our contract and then set whatever the hello function spits out to a data object. That data object will then be set to our React state, and it will be console logged. And then down here, it'll also give it to us in our actual component. And then we have an on click to run that function when we click the button you want to.
Oh. All right, nice. Right? Pretty simple. Yeah.
So
and I do have a hunch on the environment variable, but I'll hold it.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
It's a security measure. Since you are exposing an environment variable to client-side JavaScript, there's a thing. But yeah.
All right. So you have to append it with Vite underscore or something else?
I think it's public. But don't quote me. I think it's that.
Okay, that's what I was doing wrong.
If it's not in our docs, I'm updating our docs because that is frustrating.
Yeah. Part of the problem is that when I was using Vite by itself, it was seeming to work. So I'm not sure if there's something different going on between how Astro is managing the way that Vite manages environments, but this is kind of in the weeds, and so let's not worry about that too much. And then here we're going to just update our Astro index.astro file again. We're going to import that React component, and then we're going to have it here. And why don't you talk a little bit about this client visible here? What is that doing?
Oh, yeah. So it will only load the component when it scrolls into view. So like if you were really caring about performance and check the network tab, you can see the component only loads the JavaScript part when it's on the screen. So you'll just see the static rendered text moon and the button, I guess, but the button won't be clickable until it's actually on screen.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Now, moment of truth.
Nice.
So what we're going to do now is pop that open. And then here we want to make sure that this is connected here. So our wallet is connected to this site. This is where you get owned. Don't ever connect your wallet to a site that you do not trust. And then click the button. Boom. So now we see here.
All right.
Hello from Astro. and also our state in our component. And then I also just have the little address, contract address go right there. So that is like your whole end-to-end hello world using Astro and your reading. And then the next level would be setting. So now we're going to have a setter function here, and this will go right under our fetch hello function. And what this will do is it will do the same thing with the provider, but then this time we also have a signer. So this is the part where I'm saying you want to actually associate this with a wallet so that no one else, this will end up being a site that's going to be on the internet with a link anyone can look at, but no one else can set this without the proper signage. And so this is where you are having control over your contract and what is being done with it because you signed it with your wallet. And then once we do that, we then feed in the contract address and the Hello World ABI like we did before, and the signer, along with then this transaction, which will run set hello and then set it with the hello state variable. And then do an await and then run the rerun the fetch hello function, which then runs that again. And then the final part will be a little input. This is not really the best way to do this. Is kind of not very good React, but it's just going to be a simple way for us to get going. Let's do that. And I'm sorry. Okay. That should be good to go now. So let's make sure this is still actually, yeah, that should be good. And then if we change this to hello from localhost, we'll set the message. And then this will then ask us to actually confirm it. And what here is happening, this is where if we were doing this on mainnet, it would cost a certain amount. But if you look here, it's costing us an extremely small amount. And this is one of the reasons why I'm using Avalanche instead of Ethereum proper, because I think that until Ethereum can get its scaling story figured out, it's not really a great blockchain to use right now because the transaction costs are so high. Like I bought like an Ethereum domain. The domain cost $15 and the transaction cost was $200. So like that's a huge problem. Whereas with Avalanche, that's not the case. Okay. Yeah. And then we're going to sit here and wait 10 to 15 seconds while that goes through.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there you go.
Nice.
Did not.
Something happened.
Do it properly. Let me try.
Window might have reloaded.
This hello from localhost again. Yeah, this is something that I always find is hard in development, is when you need to rerun your server versus not, because I find that most people like being able to develop with their server just constantly running and it like figures out for you. But just like I have yet to find a framework that actually can successfully do that without having you restart with environment variables or like changing something. It's like there's just like so many levels to it. So that time it worked. So all we had to do was just restart our server.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Not quite sure why, but I know a lot of things are going on with like the window object responding to events that are coming back. I'd have to poke.
I know it's a whole thing, and there's like it's a whole thing. Like no one's QAing Web3 stuff on Astro right now. So like I understand why we're gonna run into a couple kind of bugs like that, and that is all good.
Yeah. I remember poking at some like Web3 starters and noticed, wow, they're all using like Create React App and Webpack. I don't think like the web dev community that I'm a part of is the one making these tutorials. Oh my God. It'd be nice if Astro was evolved or Vite or something like that. But
well, that's what I'm pushing to, like all of my tutorials use Vite. Like I never use Create React App anymore, and I never use Webpack anymore. Like if you're running a production app right now, there's arguments to be made for sticking with Webpack, but like for me, just like building these little sample apps and like trying to push the web forward to these newer tools, like I love Vite. I think Vite's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, plain Vite is so nice with their Vite starter. That's all you need, then it's perfect.
And then here we got like a, dead simple netlify.toml here with a build command, yarn build, and a publish directory dist. And that's all we're going to need. And since we also then hard coded our contract address, we don't even need to feed netlify any environment variables, which is pretty nice. And we're going to spin up a Git repo here. Do you use the GitHub CLI by chance?
I have actually been using the built-in stuff with VS Code, where if you haven't published yet, it just has a button that says publish to GitHub. It's like, okay, I'll do that. And then it generates a repo based on your npm package name. It's so clean. It's so clean.
Cool. Yeah, I've been a big fan of the GitHub CLI. We had this GH repo create command.
I've seen this.
And then we create the repo, we make sure it's public, and then we're also going to then push up our stuff as well, and even give a description and set the remote and do the whole thing like one giant command. So I am a fan of that. And then it will give us a link right here to our actual file. And let's stay in Chrome land for now. All right, here is our repo. Go ahead and
we did
that there. And now we just got a couple more things to do, and then we will be done here. So now we're going to connect our Netlify to our GitHub, and this will be Astro. I got a couple of them, taking Astro to the moon. And there's our build commands, and then we will deploy our site. I always like setting the domain as well. We got that. And since we are using Vite, this thing builds pretty dang quickly. So it's going to, now what it's doing is it's taking our whole Astro project, it's turning it into a essentially static site that can be hosted on Netlify, and it's going to then run so it runs the Netlify build command, which then runs yarn build. And this is always one of those things. It's like, I know what most of these things mean, but not all of them. So I won't try.
Yeah, the big log at the front. I learn something new every time, depending on where the error happens.
I know, right?
Yeah, a lot of it's just ES build logs. That's always fun.
Yeah. So this should all be good to go now. So if we click here, we will get our wallet. We'll connect that and connect that, and then we'll get this. So you see how it says hello from localhost again, and that is because the contract, it is going to always be in whatever state you left it in, because even though we were running on localhost before, we were interacting with the actual contract on the actual blockchain. Right. So now we're going to say
so it is hello. Storage. It's not just a schema, I guess.
Yes, it actually stores the data for you, because we have a variable, and then we set that variable, and then that variable is stored on the blockchain. This is why a lot of people explain a blockchain as it's just a distributed database. Like, it's a distributed database that's highly encrypted, and that has conventions for letting you connect to it and interact with it with your wallet, which is doing all the cryptography for you. And then this will be the last step here. We will confirm that, and then we will wait patiently for it to finish. And if everything went according to plan, we will see hello from Netlify in a second. Any questions on that?
Bam. Oh, there it is. All right.
Yes.
Makes sense to me. So it's not like deploying a JavaScript object, for example, where like if I redeployed, if I changed it, then it would blow away the state. Is it true that like if I edited that contract to like, I don't know, make it hello ×2, like duplicate the message when you set message? Like if I deploy a change to the contract, does this state get blown away?
It depends what the change you make to the contract is. So you can so this is a kind of a complicated question, because some blockchains will have conventions set up so you can upgrade these contracts, whereas other ones are like, you can deploy a new contract if you want to change it, because there's kind of like this idea of like code is law, which is like once that contract goes out into the world, sometimes you don't want the ability to change it. You want it to be stuck in stone, and that's why it's a contract. Like if you can rewrite a contract, is it really a contract? So it kind of like brings, again, it's a philosophical question of like, what does it mean for something to be a contract? If you sign a contract and then someone then rewrites that contract and leaves your signature on it, like that's not a contract. Then like the contract needs to stay the same. So there's some blockchains will have conventions built in so you can change and upgrade contracts. And the reason why is because if there's a bug in the contract, you want to upgrade that contract. Like you want the contract to do the thing you want it to do, not the thing it's actually going to do. And this is why you have to like audit them and do this whole process around making sure it actually works the way you think it does. But for the most part, usually when you put a contract into the world, like that's it. Like it's out there. It's going to do the thing it's going to do. And then if you want to change it, like you can deploy a new contract. So this is something that me, as like someone still fairly new to Web3, I'm still learning about, like when is it actually appropriate to change a contract and not change a contract. But that's kind of like a more higher level kind of question. That's a really good question though.
Yeah, from a world of continuous deployment and the fact that it's like, oh, it's singular deployment. You can make a new one if you'd like. I guess there's no concept of like addendums either, where it's like, well, if I'm extending the metaphor, I can add addendums to like written contracts. But in this case, I just make another contract, and I'm sure it gets in the weeds of how to connect contracts or offload people from one to another, because I'm sure that's a thing people have to deal with, is like, this one's old, please move everyone to this new contract.
Yeah, and that's like a coordination kind of problem, is like you have to have everyone usually upgrade at the same time together. But yeah, so that's why, this is still new stuff. This is still, we're all kind of figuring out this Web3 world together. But that's a good kind of like end-to-end example, I think, of seeing, what is a smart contract? How do you connect front end to a smart contract? How you deploy that front end? And so like, that's an Astro dApp. Like we just built an Astro dApp. This is a decentralized application. It is running on the blockchain and is connected to that blockchain. And the centralized part is like the Netlify. So if I wanted to, I could also deploy this front end to something like IPFS, the Interplanetary File System. And that's something I'm going to be doing with the other Ben Myers. I'm going to be on Semantics next month to show how to do that. And so that would be a true dApp if you had the front end also on a decentralized network. So this right now is not really a true dApp because it's on Netlify, but like, we all know Netlify. We all love Netlify. Even though Netlify doesn't love Web3, we love them. So this is where we are right now. And I like kind of showing this example for getting like Web2 people into it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the front end piece isn't like that. Like the tech stack of the front end piece doesn't really matter a whole lot, as long as you just have the libraries to connect to the wallet to make the request. It's really just a GUI to do something you could otherwise do in a CLI, maybe. Like any other good front end, I guess, but it's not, you're not writing a full stack thing, really. It's super decoupled by design. So it's like, I could build this with anything. Astro just being my framework of choice, just because the CLI command's so easy. I'm just like, create Astro add React. Okay, I'm moving. I can use whatever I want. I just like it as a sandboxing tool. But yeah, it's cool to see it. Basically anything could use it if you want to, as long as it's JavaScript.
That's right. Yeah. Awesome. Are there any other places you want to point our viewers before we kind of close it out here? I'll drop your Twitter, and then we dropped Astro Build at the beginning, but I'll include that just one more time for people.
Yeah, those are the main two. Astro.build. I would suggest Astro.build/hack right now. We're closing the community vote for our hackathon. I think it actually closes tomorrow at midnight Greenwich time, so Central. And if you want to vote on the creations that have been out there, we have a whole new website that's been built by some members of our community that lets you browse all of the projects. It's really slick. And then you can go vote on our Google form if you see one that you really like. And we'll use the community vote to decide on the winners that will be announced in the coming weeks. So definitely hop over there. I also did a Twitch stream on this. So if you look at my Twitch streams, previous recordings, you can see me walking through some of these projects. But yeah, that is the thing to check out with Astro right now. I think it showcases a lot of new stuff we're doing. Like if you wrote your own integration, how would you do it? If you wanted to write a theme for like, I want an accessible starter, I want an e-commerce starter with Snipcart. Love that project. Authentication. There's a ton of projects there. So check out the recording for that and astro.build/hack as we're closing this thing out. Otherwise, find me on Twitter. I'm always around talking tech.
Yeah. And then, of course, check out QuickNode.com if you are interested in getting a API set up that you can interact with. We don't just have Avalanche. We actually have 14 chains right now. The 14th one is in beta, and the 13 of them are all good to go. So if you want to do Ethereum, if you want to do Solana, if you want to, we have Harmony is the one that's in beta right now. I'm going to be playing around with that in the next week or two. So yeah, like, you know, we really believe in the multi-chain future here at QuickNode, because there's certain, you know, the biggest insult in the Web3 world is calling someone a maximalist. You know, there's a Bitcoin maximalist, Ethereum maximalist, and, you know, we're not maximalists here at QuickNode. We think that a lot of different chains have a lot to offer, and we want to give developers the ability to work whichever chain they want to, and that has the trade-offs that they want.
Nice. Very, very Netlify of y'all. Very agnostic.
Totally. Yeah. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Ben. I really, really appreciate you being here. You're the first guest on these streams. This is I did a solo one last week, but yeah, I just, you know, always enjoy getting to work with you. I really enjoy just like how you explain things and how you know, have the perspective of a dev. And, you know, I think that, you know, enabling devs to work with this stuff and make it really simple and easy for them is so important. And frameworks like Astro are, you know, such a huge part of that. Hey, we just got some followers. We got 5 followers.
Nice. Nice. Welcome. Yeah. And yeah, likewise. I mean, your README walkthroughs are always legendary, very thorough. I saw you copy pasting everything through there. So yeah, glad it went on without a hitch. Basically debugged your own README live. I would have like 3 issues if I tried to do that. But yeah, well done.
Cool. And thank you. We got Prince in the stream there. Appreciate you being here. Someone else from Netlify. And yeah, this is really, really cool to kind of get some more Web 2 people looking at Web 3 stuff. You know, I really don't want there to be an us versus them mentality about Web 2 versus Web 3. Like, I really think that, you know, so many of my friends are not in the Web 3 world, and I think that's okay. But, you know, I want to make sure that we're always reaching across the aisle and not making this, you know, a battle between the two. I think the two can and should and will coexist. And there's lots that we can all learn from each other.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of opportunities there. Glad we're trying it out with new web tech.
Yeah.
Like Astro.
All right. Well, that's going to finish it up for us. So thank you all for being here. We'll be back next week. I don't have an exact date yet, but just keep an eye on the QuickNode Twitters and we will let you know. And yeah, thanks so much again, Ben, for being here.
Cool stuff. Have a good week, y'all.